Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. You know, I got to tell you, there are times that are the adventure of our lifetime, and a lot of it has to do with the people that we know in our life, the people that we love in our lives, that when they go and they pass away, oftentimes we don't get to hear their voice anymore. We don't get to hear the inflection of how they say things. We don't get to hear the stories that they've told forever that now you need to retell in your own words, which oftentimes is different. In my own life, I've had that. My grandmother used to sing happy birthday in the most god-awful way, but it was so endearing. And so we taped it. And over time, the tape degraded. And over time, it no longer was available. Flash forward to when I was doing Positive Talk, and I interviewed my dad. And my dad, it was important that I interview him, and I learned things in that interview that I never known. Well, sadly, he passed away 4 months later. But I had this interview. And so I took this interview and I edited it a little bit, gave it to the church during his memorial service, and we played in his own voice, in his own words, how he met my mom, what he thought about life, and how ultimately he wanted to be remembered. We have a gentleman today with us who is using modern technology to make all of that possible, so that the people that are in your life, especially older people, who they're going to turn to you and say, oh, no, my life wasn't special. I don't deserve to be recorded. Nobody's going to listen to what I have to say. They couldn't be more wrong. It is vital so that your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, and now, because of the work that this man is doing, his name is Cristian, and I'm going to have him give us his last name so that I don't screw it up. Cristian, how are you? And your last names, please.
Doing all right, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me. My last name is Cibils Bernardus, which is it's a mouthful. But in South America, we keep both of our parents' last names. So you can think of it as like a hyphenated last name without a hyphen. So Cibils is my dad's last name, and Bernardus is my mom's last name. And my dad is also Christian, so this is my way of saying junior without saying junior.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. And have I misstated that in any way? Because the work that you are doing is remarkable. And you know, it just amazes me that because I had a program called Family Legacies at one point, and I would go and interview people, and I had the hardest time getting older people who had such life experience to interview. I had to go to their children, and their children would say, oh, yeah, we want to know Dad's story, and we want to know all about what he did. And one guy was on the staff of George Patton during World War II, and as they were going across Europe trying to save us from Hitler and the Nazis. And then he went and worked in Hollywood, and he met people like Bob Hope. Okay, for you younger people, Bob Hope was a great comedian, and he was in an event, and he didn't think his life mattered. And so I'm so glad that you have decided to take this passion project on to make it happen. Tell us how it all began and what exactly we're talking about here.
Yeah, so essentially you got it exactly right. we're building a personal historian for every family that documents each of the members' journeys through life. So it's an AI character called Walter that calls you or your parents or your grandparents once a week, roughly, is what we expect, but you can call him whenever you want. And he interviews you about your life. So it starts with your childhood, your early days, your family, all the way up to present day, where it becomes more of a journal, just what's going on in your life, how your project's going, how have you been feeling about the recent events in your life. And we essentially record that data as a vault of memories and treasure so that your next generation, even you, a future self, can access this data. And we do it interestingly in two ways. So on one side, you have a web portal where you have, the interview recordings with a transcript and a title and a summary. But we also build stuff on top of that. So we extract every entity in your life. So and we make a wiki page for each entity. So for each character in your life, there's a page. For each place in your life, there's a page. For each chapter in your life, there's a page. For every job in your life, there's a page. So you almost have this like really detailed map of someone's experience through life as it evolved and as it keeps evolving. But most excitingly, like in the world of AI isn't just good for interviewing and capturing the story. It's also a fantastic way to retell the story. And so what better way to retell someone's life story than in their own words, in their own voice, with their own memories, and in an interactive setting. So where it's not just a fixed thing that you press play and relive the exact same thing every time. What if you can actually consult with the past? What if you can actually talk to a version of yourself from 10 years ago or a version of grandma from 10 years ago? And so the idea being, Walter is this journal of your life, this personal historian who not only surfaces back at you the relevant context from your own life to support you in the decisions that you're making, but also the entire cultural context. So the example that we like to give is you're going through life and you maybe are considering a job in a different city, which would require uprooting. And you have to make a decision, and it's one of those like path A or path B life moments. And Walter can say, hey, this reminds you of something that your grandfather went through. Would you like to talk to him for 15 minutes? And if you say yes, Walter would be able to pass the phone to your grandfather's autograph. And he would be able to share the story of when 50 years prior, he had to close the factory down to move across the country to marry grandma. And the thing that is different about this is that not only is it a static recording, but you could actually ask grandpa, okay, so what was the fallout? What was the cost? What is something that I should look out for if I do something similar? What if grandma had said no? Did you have a plan B? And not only that, but then you can also ask grandma her side of the story and the kids' side of the story. And all of a sudden you start exploring this much richer picture of these big life decisions and how they affect the people around us, so that when we make our life decisions, they're more informed and they're better. And just by having that exchange, you're already paying it forward to the next generation and your loved ones, your kids, your grandkids, so that when they're talking and figuring it out, they can learn from what you learned too. So that's what we're building.
So are you telling me, as an example, my mother passed away 3 years ago. She was 90. Well, she had a great life, and 90 years, I ain't gonna make it that long, but that's a long time. But the interesting thing was there were aspects of her life that she didn't really even understand. But if I could go talk to her father, who was a staunch German, and ask him why he behaved the way he did, and AI was then to help, Walter was able to help us come to terms with what happened to him when he was a child and how it affected him and how he became the way he was, which affected my mother, which affected my family, which affected our next generation. We would be able to put together a real time view of what had happened and why our family was behaving the way that they were, why Uncle Charlie has always been a drunk, and well, maybe he wasn't always that way, and he had some things that went on. So is that the direction you're going with this?
Definitely. I mean, so more so thinking of how do we capture the stories from today to inform the next generation, because there's also like the benefit of self-reflection that happens when you just think of your life as a story that you're a participant in, right? You are the main character and author of your story, and you're essentially directing the plot with every action that you take. And so bringing awareness to that, even in just your own life, I think is important. But especially as we start finding these connections with like our past and our peers and our loved ones, and the experiences that we all go through that are very human and very difficult, that we want to maximize the learning out of, so that we reduce the suffering for our loved ones. I think that for sure, that's exactly the picture that we hope to paint for the next generation or the one after that, where they can get bedtime stories and hear about retellings of their, the lives of their ancestors, and how they inform the personality profiles of the people that are around them, and the narrative arcs that they may find themselves in. And so, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that, and families are one set of, there's one set of knowledge and mythology that you can inherit from your family, but it extends to everybody, right? Like, you meet friends along the journey that you want to share, like, someone's godson or someone's godfather, or, like, there are people who become like family, that you also want to do this, like, beautiful wisdom exchange with. So 100%, yeah.
Well, and I understand that it's hard to go back to people that have already passed because this is new technology, but you can find out the history of them. But more importantly, moving forward, I think it's really exciting that now, if I wasn't on the radio doing like a billion shows and stuff, but if I was just a quiet person who could answer the phone and answer a couple of questions, and it built a portfolio so that my grandchildren, my great grandchildren, long after I'm gone, they could get a sense for who I was, why I lived the way I lived, and the experiences that I had that made it all either possible or made it all very difficult. That would be a really foundational change. How did you come up with this?
Oh, yeah. So the origin story is pretty crazy. I could give you a bit of my life story, which I think is like very embedded to the origin of the company. But I grew up in Paraguay, which is why my last name is the way it is. And Paraguay, I think of Paraguay as the Shire of the world. If you're a Lord of the Rings person, it's very, rural, agricultural. It's very much about relationships. It's very much about having a wonderful time with a tight knit group of folks who are all co-located. So families are really big. Nobody ever leaves Paraguay, and so everybody's cousins and everybody's second cousins, and like, oh, they're the Rodriguezes, or they're the people based on their clan, basically. So a lot of the family mythology is kept intact because you have this tribe that is constantly reliving the stories. Um, Very unique setup for me though, because I grew up with my parents being who they are, who are tech entrepreneurs, and there's not much of a tech scene in Paraguay. And so it was a very unique situation to be the child of two uh, computer scientists who studied computer science in the 80s in Paraguay, who figured out that this was going to be a big technology, and watch them iterate and iterate. They're 50% partners in the business. My mom is the CEO, which is also very unusual, and my dad's the CTO. So a lot of very, unique appreciation for technology and entrepreneurship early on in my life, and also family. And um, my parents are one of the very few cases, if not the only one, of a tech company expanding internationally from Paraguay. And so that got us thinking global. I applied to school in the US. I was extremely fortunate to get into Stanford, where I discovered this quirky major called Symbolic Systems, which allowed me to blend my interest in computer science because I'd seen what it could do, with a more academic understanding of philosophy, psychology, and linguistics. I was always interested in the why behind technology, not just the how. And so symbolic systems allowed me to frame all of this around artificial intelligence. I've also always loved science fiction and the stories about what happens when technology, reaches a certain threshold where it gives us a new understanding of the world. Um, and I've also always loved education, so I taught computer science at Stanford, and then turned that into a job at Google. I was an engineer there, doing just generic software engineering in both ads and then in an AI education team. That was really cool. Um, and then during the pandemic, I decided to join the family business. And as it was pivoting from, SMS, my parents used to build out SMS infrastructure for the AT&Ts of Latin America and Africa. SMS isn't going anywhere. So the company was becoming an investment firm. And the idea to power the next generation of Latin American entrepreneurs so that they could have a similar growth journey to the one my parents had. Huge culture shock going from Google to the family business. I will say,
man.
oh man, that was very different, but very enriching in the sense that it was also at a pivotal point in the story where we were coming to terms with the fact that my wife now is American, and so we're most likely going to raise kids in the U.S. And so coming to terms with the fact that our family dynamic is going to change in the future, it's a lot of conversations about legacy and how do we transmit our family values in a context in which we don't all live in the same 5-block radius. Um, and and at some point, also after 2 years of working with my parents are amazing. They're the ultimate founders. They would say things like, "You have to think like a founder and act like a founder and have those founder instincts." And it got to the point where I realized I don't know that I can simulate being a founder without actually putting myself in a position where I have to navigate the uncertainty that a founder navigates. And so I decided to start my own thing. And I wanted to be diligent and thoughtful about what the thing I started was because I knew that it was going to be an AI because ChatGPT had just come out. And and I saw how the linguistics I saw that it's the perfect tool to build something new that will enable all these kind of magical new use cases. But I didn't want to build something that would be killed really quickly by either an AI company adding something that competes with what we did, or a big company that already has a distribution advantage that they could just add a AI thing on top that would make it really difficult for us to do something. I knew it needed to be something new. But I couldn't find what it was immediately.
Well, let me stop you here because I need to take a
Yes,
break, but I want you to because it continued to evolve in your own mind until something triggered it, and then
yes,
all of a sudden it was like, hey, guess what? By the way, if somebody wants to go to your website, how do they do it?
autograph-ai.com. Just go for it. It's the easiest thing. If there's somebody who comes to mind of someone who you love, whose story is worth remembering, and by some reason, if you think that the urgency is near, as we get to the point in the story where it all comes together, it's more urgent than you think.
You never know. And we'll be right back.
You became a real estate agent for freedom, success, and real momentum. So why are you still stuck waiting for closings to save you? I'm Ophir Adar, founder of Real Momentum, and I help agents like you become 7-figure earners. My first client that I coached, brand new agent, made $250,000 back in 2006. What's the secret? You feed your white wolf. That's the part of you that's bold and unstoppable and a closer and able to build rapport quickly. So click Get Listings at Real Momentum and let's unleash your real estate potential.
With Kevin McDonald, and Rochelle is busy hunting headphones, and oh, wait a minute,
There she is.
It's magic. I say Rochelle, and she just shows up.
Yep, that's how it
And
works.
have you been listening in a little bit?
Yes. I've been listening while I've been tracking down headphones, and it's brought a lot of things to my mind. So I want to let Christian figure out the rest of what he was going to say, and then I'll pitch in a little bit.
So tell us now, there was, you were searching and AI was out there and you knew it was coming and you knew what impacts it could have because you're an AI guy and you're a techie guy. You and I could probably have a conversation for a half hour and I wouldn't understand any of it. But so tell us, what was the epiphany in your mind and in your heart that it was like, oh, look what I thought of?
Yeah, so there's one little side quest in the middle that I think is important to the story. So I couldn't find exactly what to build, but I realized that the only part of AI that isn't going to change, everything's going to get smarter, everything's going to get faster, everything's going to be different. The only part that isn't going to change is that we're going to need data to train AI in the future. We're going to need better, more higher quality data, and that data isn't just a passive thing. It's not something that the AI reads and then, okay, got it. In the same way that a human can read a book and, your life can change based on the book you read, the same thing can happen to AI. So I realized, wait a minute, I need to be writing content or generating content that when put as part of these training pipelines, that it actually updates the mind of these machine gods that we're building to point toward a utopian future as opposed to the dystopian future that we had just crawled out of during the pandemic. And so this was the nerdiest excuse ever to write a sci-fi novel. So the project that I did find was I'm going to write a sci-fi novel that's going to be a fantastical retelling of my life story. I'm going to get all of my philosophy in order and put it into a cohesive picture of what I think is about to happen in the world and how things are going to change so quickly. But at least I'll tell my piece. And I cannot express the degree of existential relief I've found in going through that exercise and quite literally becoming the author of my own story. And so I felt like I had this thought, man, I wish everybody could feel this way. I wish everybody could document their story and appreciate it for the fact that it is a story and that you have agency and authorship over where that story goes by every action that you take. So I had that in the back of my mind, but I was also in this project where I was like, okay, I should promote the book. And so I started my own podcast where I interviewed thought leaders on what happens to the world, what happens to our humanity in the age of AI. And so interviewing Stanford professors and venture capitalists and AI researchers and authors and poets, and what does it mean for jobs, and what does it mean for the economy, and what does it mean for our sense of self and artistic expression. And this was a couple of years ago, so I don't think we still are having the right conversations, because I think these things blow up in an instant, and then all of a sudden society looks really different. And I think there's conversations worth having about what happens when this technology is set loose. But I also fell in love with the medium along the way, and just in the same way that I love having conversations with folks like you, Kevin and Rochelle. I love finding out what makes somebody who they are, what cards they were dealt, and how they've played them, and what tickles their intellectual curiosity. I thought at that point, what if I could interview everybody on Earth? And one of the people that I wanted to interview was my grandma. Similar to your story, Kevin, I think that my grandma has a crazy life story. Her father was an MI6 agent. So while your folks were out there in Normandy, my great grandpa was in Spain somewhere, like spying on Franco's financial operations, and shipped the family to Paraguay of all places because it got to the point where they needed somewhere at the end of the world that felt safe. And so my grandma with her mom and her sister made a life in a male-dominated society. She became a prominent industrialist in multiple industries. She was a teacher. She raised 5 kids on her own in truly very, very difficult settings. And all of this story exists in this, family mythology because we all are together and we used to have lunch together every Saturday. But at some point I realized I need to document this. And so we set an interview, and a few days before the interview, she had a stroke. And that was life, and that is very sad. And she lived an amazing life where she accomplished a ton. She was knighted by the king of Norway, like that degree of like how, what, um, and but I had the list of questions that I now knew I was never going to get an answer to. And that was the catalyst where it made me look back and connect the dots. Like, how does this all connect? My love for storytelling and feeling like, telling your story is a good thing for you, and taking ownership of your story, and interviewing and the interpersonal stuff, and my knowledge of AI and my experience building AI systems and understanding not just the how, but the why. Um, and I realized this is a solved problem. This is a solved problem. We have AI. If we stitch things together in the right way, we can create a product, a service where we interview all of our loved ones, capture their life story, and on the other side, give the next generation a completely new way to understand themselves and the stories that shaped them. Uh, and that led to the creation of Autograph and Walter as a character. And what role did Walter play in people's lives? And how do we create a system that allows stories to persist? And the future generations, when the archaeologists are looking back at what happened during this time where AI was accelerating, that they can hear in our voice our fears, our hopes, our prayers, our insecurities, our securities, our confidence, our warmth, our cold, our relationship with our higher self and the white wolf, our relationship with our baser self and the the dark wolf, and understanding that drama. The idea being that if we generate millions of examples of people taking ownership of their story and understanding it and feel validated by it and work to make it as heroic and epic and generous and kind as the version of us that we want to be remembered, then that is going to be the example that we set for the super intelligent machines that are going to take on more and more of the economic responsibility in the world. And we sure as insert expletive here, hope that the next generation of AI, GPT-7, is a good guy.
Rochelle, I know you have got a question or two.
Well, the way I didn't even know there was different GPTs has me questioning how are we already on number 7, why, and all those things.
Oh.
But mainly sticking with your story and what you're doing to create this. Is this like a framework as it gives you a novel of someone? Does it put a perception of them talking? Like, can you put a picture? Like, how does this kind of play out
Yes.
once you have the story?
Totally. So the most important thing for us right now, because there's urgency in recording stories, is making sure that the interview experience is good to get the real good stuff. And that data gets stored in a web portal. So there's a web page where you can access your interviews, the transcripts, the summaries, recordings. And then we plan to build stuff on top of that. So, things like a Wikipedia for your life, or, your loved one's life, where you have a page for everyone you love and a page for the places you used to go to in college, or the place you used to work at, or, the whatever. And really try and build like this world, this like really encyclopedic understanding of what the human experience is like. To be consumed so that you understand where you come from, or where like your folks come from, but also to understand yourself and to navigate and to get different feedback. For example, you probably will have a page for a big milestone like a graduation or a wedding, and you are never alone in the journey, so you want to get complementing perspectives as well. Like what's your wife's perspective on your wedding? What are the guests' perspective on the event? And so to really try and immortalize these moments that, become so important at the time that you're living, but then become like these rough chapters in your life as you age.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a web portal where you can see all this stuff. But the most exciting thing for us is the Walter experience. When you're talking to Walter, Walter can actually pass the phone to the autograph of someone you love, or yourself, or like your past version. So you may be telling Walter, I need to move across the country, and Walter can say, that reminds me of something that your grandpa went through. Do you want to talk to him for 15 minutes? and so you'd be able to talk to the past. And that is the exciting new world. Like kids will be able to get bedtime stories from their great grandparents. And insofar as there's like a real version of the story, but we can build all of these like retellings of the story that are age appropriate, or that are different, consumed in different formats. There's like a website version of this where you can explore all this data, but there's obviously like you can generate an audiobook with that person's voice that tells that person's autobiography start to finish. You can do biopics and incorporate generated videos and things like that. So there's no shortage of what we can do with the data. We're excited about what are the stories that are worth capturing today.
Well, and Christian, I got to tell you, because if you could go back to my wedding day, if this was available then, and you could talk to me, and then you could talk to my wife at the time, and then you could play back what she said then versus what she did later, that's gold and priceless.
Oh yeah.
We need to take our halftime break, and we're going to be right back, Rochelle and I, and she's got more intense questions about ChatGPT 7. Oh, my God. Didn't they just do I don't know. I don't. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
Welcome back to Positive Talk with Rochelle, the dancing one over there, and Christian, and he's going to give us his last two names, or three, again, so that
Symbils Bernardus. Yes, it's a mouthful. I know. Symbils Bernardus. It's a lot.
And English is my second language, so I don't speak that anyway. But it's amazing to me, because had this been available a long time ago, I remember when I was like 20 and I was sitting at the dining room table with my grandparents, my grandpa, my aunt and uncle, my mom and dad, and me, and they're all gone now. It would be so cool to be able to have that. Rochelle, you've lost both your grandmoms in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I still have voicemails from them and things like that, slight pictures, but I've honestly haven't even played with the thought of bringing those pictures to life, or making that voice real. I think sometimes that can be a little bit shocking and maybe a little terrifying. But also, I'm thinking about how precious it is, to take those and use that from the past, but also how we can use it now for our life. Because I could inquire that into my life and use it almost as a journal to write out my story. And then it's like, hey, you said this 5 years ago. Let's see where you were at then. And then it's kind of a reminder to be like, okay, well, where did that take me? What happened? Or to even be proud of yourself and to look back, at how you said those memories, those pages. Because most people, we just have, me, as in most people, have 17,000 photos and videos on their phone that it's just like, oh, let me go find that. And it becomes nearly impossible. So to kind of have it mapped out and laid out in a way of your own journal for your life, but also something to reflect from other people and their stories. Kevin asked me to start doing that, for my great grandpa. He's getting to be 90 years old, and sometimes he'll just start telling stories. And Kevin said, record him. And so that's what I did. And I may not realize how powerful that is until maybe the day he passes and we can go back and play those videos in real time of how he met my great grandma, because I don't think anybody but maybe me and three other people in my family have ever heard that story. So this is way more powerful than really even how I was thinking of it. And I'm guessing so GPT and AI, or chat GPT and AI, are connected as one. Like as GPT changes, does AI also change? Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah. Well, let me double click on the thing that you said before, Michelle. But
Okay,
not
yeah.
only, I'm so glad that you recorded your grandpa's story. It's just getting to do that is such a powerful experience. It's sad to me that not more people do it, but it is a lot of work, and it is like an emotional space that is challenging to inhabit because it's also like
Yeah,
it requires two-way buy-in into the authenticity of the whole thing, right? And
right.
what we found is like usually this type of stuff falls into the hands of one person in the family. It usually is a pretty ungrateful job where like it is precious family heirlooms, but it's never rewarded in any kind of way. It's almost taken for granted. And then there's a whole like production process of like, what do you do with those recordings? Do you edit it into a documentary? Do you transcribe it and put it into a book? It's actually a challenging process
Yeah.
that is actually very costly and time intensive and very difficult to do. So what we found is like autograph is a really easy way for anybody to get that data in. And it almost is a disservice to call it data. These are the stories that make up our souls. But you totally got it right that it's like that is. You think about like if you could tap into every past love story in support of the one that you're writing today, you know,
I
you
hope
would
I would
learn.
have hope.
I don't think we have that much time, quite frankly.
But in any case, or like job interviews, or like like
Yeah.
sales pitches, or things like that, where like you can actually just leapfrog all of the mistakes that a lot of people have made, that they have paid the cost of, uh, then you may not need to pay that cost.
Yeah.
So, and just for anybody listening, autograph-ai.com, just the easiest way to do it. I mean,
Say that
it's almost,
slower. Say it slower. They want to hear. Go
let's
ahead.
yeah, autograph-ai.com.
Perfect. And I wanted to just mention this that it's irony at its highest form that it's taking modern technology to save and remember humanity.
Right.
Yeah, but it's such a big blessing too because we can look from those perspectives and also learn now. Okay, how is it different then? How is it different now? What what's the medium between that can help me grow it a step further, right?
Exactly. And this will be true, like what I think, you think about the difference between two generations ago and today, and it's like a
Yeah.
different planet. And I think that the difference are going to accelerate. So I think the difference between 10 years ago and today is going to be nothing compared to the difference between today and 10 years from now. So this is going to be stuff that our brains are having a hard time keeping up with all the changes. So this is just an extension for how do we preserve all of the stories that have come so far as things change so differently in the labor force, in jobs, the economy, geopolitically. I think that it's super important. But no, to the point about ChatGPT and other stuff, I use that as an example. I think the latest ChatGPT or the latest GPT is 4.5, I think. But it was just my way of saying there's going to be a ChatGPT 5, there's going to be a GPT 6. And these things are going to be smarter and better and more emotionally intelligent, and they're going to be capable of doing more things. But what we want to do is make sure that as we train them that we are all doing our part in living our lives to the best of our heroic ability, because we are training these things that are going to be extremely influential in society. They're going to be the things that decide what missiles get fired. And so when thinking about an automated system that is making a decision about harming someone else, did we do our best to make sure that we are responsible stewards of our power and influence. And did we do our best to live up to the heroic standards that we hold others to? And I think that in a world in which we have millions of examples of people, it's not very difficult. It really is just about, you find out so much about a person by having them tell their story. Tell me your story, start from the beginning. You find out what language they use. You find out how positive or negative they are, how if they see themselves as an actor or as a victim, and just being aware that it is a story that your brain thinks is real, that you actually have control over, and you can actually you are the editor. You can choose to frame things differently. You can choose to embrace things in a different way. I think that's just so important. And I think that, AI is fascinating and cool, and we can talk about the technology a lot. But I'm really interested in, okay, what is the thing that we feed this thing so that it's the most nutritious thing for everybody in the future?
And I have to tell you, you are the first guest that I've ever had, and it proves that you're a techie guy. The first guest I've ever had that said, "Let me double click and go back to what you just said." I've never heard that before.
Oh no, I revealed myself. My gosh, that's the San Francisco in me.
Kevin, when you mentioned that, I thought about when he said double click, and I was like, wait, so if we are doing that, because you mentioned double generations, we're double clicking backwards to get the stories now. Whatever we're producing, whatever we're creating, even through this AI, is creating our future, and like our kids, our grandkids, our grandkids can all learn from this. But how we lay it out is probably one of the scariest realities we probably have going on right now.
But I will say, Michelle, how impactful and beautiful is the project of Positive Talk Radio?
It could be amazing.
Knowing this stuff. So the effect of this platform, where it is highlighting everybody's heroic journey and just trying to, how do we frame this in a positive light, and bring out the goodness in the world, and have people be open to all the synchronicities that arise once you connect to this frequency. This is, I think, like one of the, if you think about the leverage that it has on society and the people listening, on the people internalizing this stuff, on the people who then share and then just expand it further, already huge. But if you think about the fact that all of this stuff will be transcribed and put into the AI as well, then think about the effect that it's going to have on that stuff too. So it's scary in the sense that, we have the responsibility and freedom to inform the future that we want. Yeah. But we also have it's also a freedom, It's all we get to, we pick the flavor of reality that we want to live in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. And if we can take a break early, Kevin, I'm itching because the first thing that came to my mind when you said that is, how could this positively impact our environment? Because many people think of AI and they think we're not going to be breathing trees. We're not going to have grass in our front yards. There's not going to be water. There's going to be all this and that. So I'm curious as to what you have to say about that.
And we're going to be right back. Beautifully done, Brichelle.
When the game is on the line, championship teams know the game plan. They communicate and work together to win. We all need a game plan to protect ourselves online. Talk to family and friends so they know how to stay safe too. Create strong passwords, turn on multi-factor authentication, update software, and recognize and report phishing, because online safety is not something you want to fumble. Get more game-winning tips at CISA.gov/secure our world. Then share them with family and friends.
Welcome back to Positive Talk with Brichelle right there. And my name is Kevin McDonald. And Christian is right over there. And he is doing something that I tried. God knows I tried with a program called Family Legacies. And I couldn't get people to do it. But if I could get them to just answer the phone and answer a couple of questions each week, and then they do it again and again, you might even find that, well, I could go off and on, but Brichelle, Go ahead and ask that question again.
Yeah, so just whatever your view and your perspective is on how we can maintain this in a healthy manner to help our environment rather than destroy it.
So I think AI is going to be a forcing function for us to figure out energy. And I think there's
Right.
no like we're gonna have to figure out sustainability really quickly.
Hmm.
There is no future without sustainability. There's no food, there's no shelter, there's nothing that can sustain a chaotic environment. And the kind of thing that makes me hopeful about the future is that this is an existential threat, and AI is also an existential threat, but we can solve these two problems together. So AI, in its spirit of its own survival, will want to figure out its own sources of energy so that we don't live in this dystopian nightmare.
Hmm.
And I think and if you look at just what's happened in the last 5 years or so, there was this paper came out maybe 2 or 3 years ago that ChatGPT burned like I don't know a gallon of water for each query that you used, something ridiculously insane. Um,
Hmm.
but it just even in 2 years that has gone down to almost nothing. So the rate at which these technologies are getting cheaper and more energy efficient is actually very encouraging. And that we can use these technologies to then design more sustainable systems, be it solar, be it nuclear, be it all kinds of energy sources that maybe we're not even tapping into today. Um, will help us reorganize and rethink our agricultural production systems so that we can build the soil as opposed to exploit it, and we can synergize with our environment. And I don't know, I feel like there's a renaissance of all kinds of alternative ways of
Oh
thinking
yeah,
about
for sure.
and I happen to be a huge fan of permaculture and that kind of stuff. So like, I'm excited to see AI start designing permaculture farms and really start robustifying our environment. So I'm actually very optimistic. I kind of have to be. If you if you give in to the temptation to be nihilistic or cynical about this machine that we can't stop, then that's the world we're gonna manifest and materialize. And so very much in the
Right.
same way that I sustain this idea of a world with positive human connection, like a unifying force that binds people from different backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, religious backgrounds, into a shared humanity or shared conscious experience. I also subscribe to the same for all of the other stuff that we have to do to support that conscious experience.
Okay, well, I have one more question if you're not going to say anything, Kevin.
I was waiting for you. I knew
Because
better.
I'm thinking, imagine if there was a Facebook where you could go and you could share your biography or your story or somebody that was obviously like you're agreeing to this and it's protected and confidential so that maybe we could realize that for one, we're not alone, and for two, learn from other people if maybe we don't have a history or a background. I think of all these people that may have been adopted or their family passed away or something tragic happened and they don't have that to go back to because those people are not here. And opening up maybe doors for that. Have you ever thought about something like that?
That is exactly what we're building. I mean, that our web portal is this
Yeah.
idea where you
Yay!
yeah, that's exactly what we want. So like the web portal, you get your own data and your own wiki with your own pages, but you also see the pages of the people that you loved and their stories and their world. And
Okay.
based on what you have access to, you can see the stuff that your significant other shares, or your loved ones share, or your parents share, or your siblings share. And so we're actually really excited about families have to update each other all the time. A lot of families don't live together. So how do we get Autograph to be the place where you share your family updates? Like I got a new job, I got a new, I'm in love, that kind of stuff.
I just had
That's
it. So
amazing.
the epiphany is then you can create this entire dynamic. It's like a audio, video, picture book in real time.
Yeah.
Correct.
Of the whole family though, not even just one person. Your family, your friends, everybody like I could imagine just everybody in my circle, everybody in my group getting to even they know me, but they don't know of each other very much. And if I mean, could imagine the things they learn from each other just to have that to share, and the support system. Like to have that many people being like, oh my gosh, I saw that this happened, or, reach out to call you when you don't have time to make a phone call. And when, it's just, get to tell everybody all at the same time. That is absolutely genius. I don't know why I wasn't understanding it or seeing it like this whole time, but it clicked.
I'm glad it clicked. I mean, I think we're building something. I can't get more excited about this. Like this is
Yeah.
something that connects me to my family. It connects me to like the country that I was born in. It connects me to. It forces me to be aligned in every dimension. I have to be the trustworthy person that goes and for each of my family members, ask them, "I'm building this thing. I love you. I don't spend enough time with you. I'm trying to solve this problem for everybody on Earth. It would be an honor to record your story." While at the same time having to figure out everything required to fund and market and place and optimize and build a business while taking care of the ones that I love and being present for my family and friends. And so I just feel so lucky that I get to work in a space that is so human.
Cristian, I got to ask you, are you going to be able to build in what I would call your BS detector?
Yeah.
As an example, if Walter calls and you say, and he asks you a question, I love the name Walter, by the way, Walter. And Walter says, so tell me about this particular thing. And then so you tell them that and they say, well, that's not the story you gave me last week. Which one is it? Is that going to be?
Yeah. So
that's just frightening.
So we want to be very careful with how we present this. But I think if you share a story and then you evolve your perspective on the same story, that is worth documenting. What has changed? What happened to you that informed your new interpretation of this thing? Are you happy with this new interpretation of the thing? Are you better for it? Are you worse off for it? Is it something you want to think about now? Is it something you want to check in a few weeks? So we don't want to be prescriptive in the sense that we say, hey, you're lying, or like it's bad to lie. We just want to say, hey, we noticed that you're saying that like this thing has changed, but I'm like as an AI trying to understand the human experience. It would be interesting for me to understand what's going on. Obviously, there's a bunch of other stuff that we can build, like maybe a separate character that isn't Walter. So Walter's the documentarian and the historian, but maybe there's there's Coach, and Coach can have a different set of experiences with you that is more around like, okay, what are you going to do? And then did you do it? And did you, or why not? And so
I got one. Let's make a prosecuting attorney so that when you get the whole family involved, and then you say, well, your daughter-in-law said this about her growing up with you. And I got to ask you to tell me the truth, young man, or I'm going to share with everybody that you were a poophead or with something like that. I think that would be fun. Don't you, Michelle? Maybe? Kind of?
I mean, it could be so dangerous. I mean, if I was to be really upset and who I was 3 years ago and this were to exist between my family, there'd probably be things to delete. And hopefully that would be the option, but also get to share those. I think about maybe people who have been through traumatic experiences or something that happened to them, or share the story they'd like to share when they were little that people may have not thought, oh, I didn't know that affected them, or none of us maybe knew this happened to them at school when they were in 4th grade, that they can share it with their family, but without it being so abrupt. It's not face to face, it's not on the phone, there's nothing they can respond to. All they can do is listen. So I think it's powerful and in a good way.
Totally. And then I think, we certainly don't want to, I mean, the most sacred thing we have is the trust that our members and account holders place on us. So we would never want to use that data in a way that could be compromising to them or to their well-being or to the epicness of the story that they want to live out. And to your point, Michelle, I think that the world is wrestling in general with like the parts of our history that we would like to delete. But I think it's a mistake to delete. I think it's a mistake to feel like, oh, that never happened. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna forget about this dark period. I'm gonna forget about this person that I didn't enjoy being. I think that we have to confront the shortcomings of our past selves in order to become our best selves. And so I think the opposite is actually more important. I think that the relationship we have, or like I have with Walter, should be enough that I can express my raw self, imperfect and impure and human and limited, such that in the belief that in aggregate, if I work on it and I reflect on it and I evolve over time, that I will become the person that I want to become, and that I will be the version that I want to be remembered as. And then nothing will be a better sign of triumph than it's easy
To look back and be like, oh, you know what? Wow. I guess that makes
this
sense.
guy, yeah, I didn't believe in myself, and look, I just finished a marathon, or look, I just got signed my first contract, or look, I didn't know how to sell and I sold, or these are. It's easy to get lost in the achievement route.
Yep.
And that is the world that we see. The influencers and the successful people and celebrities. We did rarely get a chance to see the dark of the night. But I bet you that the people that they love, or anybody successful, is aware of the dark of the night.
Oh, yeah.
Ask anybody
And
married to anybody successful.
there's still love too. There's still love. And that's what makes it what it is. If I know people that I look at them and I'm like, you used to really not be the greatest person, but I'm proud of you and I love you. And I do the same thing with me. So that is powerful.
And the cool thing is, as people evolve, as an example, if you had a horrific childhood, sometimes you forget and you bury it. And then it comes up years later, and that can be incorporated into your story so that people can understand why certain behaviors happened when they happened, and you didn't even know why they were happening yourself. And now it's all become true and stuff. This could be very therapeutic as well.
Yeah. We don't want to brand this as therapy, because
No.
I think, obviously we're not gonna if you have any kind of cognitive disease, ADHD, OCD, anything like that, we don't want to be in a position to perform actual treatment. But it's a journal. I mean, it's very much all of the benefits that you associate with a journaling habit, we get to piggyback off of, but with the benefit of being voice and being passive, nobody gets talker's block, but everybody gets writer's block.
Exactly. As Christian, we're going to run out of time, but I want you to make sure that we get all your information out, because there are people that are going, how the heck do I find this stuff? Go ahead.
Yes, so please go to autograph-ai.com. That is where you can sign up. You can sign up for the people that you love. It is, it's very much a work in progress. We're working on making it better every day. We're building new features all the time, but talking to Walter is already a fun experience. And if you go to autograph-ai.com, you can actually talk to Walter immediately. There's a button there where you could just get a phone call from him and get a taste of what the experience is like. And if you want to give me direct feedback on the product or anything like that, you can just email me at Cristian with no H at autograph-ai.com.
It is wonderful to have you here, Brachelle. What do you think? And I've enjoyed this conversation. I enjoy the wondrous possibilities that this presents.
Yeah, all I'm saying is I'm going to try this, and my whole family's going to be doing it whether they like it or not. And just thank you for not even just thinking of it, but creating it and believing in something that you could share with the world, because it all started with just you. And that is also worth something and is extremely powerful. So thank you so much for your time and for being here. And we've got to check back in with you in a few months or a year to see where we're standing after this.
I would love to come back. I mean, I want to thank you guys for the platform and for the beautiful project that you guys are doing. I think that the world needs more of this and to spread the joy. Thank you guys. It's been awesome. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk about the stuff that I think about all day.
Well, we're not done. We've got to, this is, we could probably have you on every day for a week, and it changes so fast that there would be new information. But we'll save it for a couple of months, but Christian's got to come back, because I'm really interested in saving our humanity and saving our stories for future generations. Cristian, thank you so much. And the name of the website again is
autograph-ai.com.
Perfect. Thank you, Rochelle. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because